Good evening and welcome. I'm Sylviane Diouf, the director of the Lapidus Center for the Historical Analysis of Transatlantic Slavery. The Lapidus Center, thank you. The Lapidus Center brings you wonderful and stimulating programs on the history of slavery, the slave trade, and resistance. And please visit us at lapiduscenter.org. You can view our past programs, you can subscribe to our newsletter, you can visit our digital exhibitions, you can apply for a fellowship, and you can register for upcoming programs. Actually, next week, on March 16, we will have another program, Reclaiming Our Ancestors. It will bring together the descendants of 4 exceptional men: Dred Scott, William Grimes, Jeffrey Brace, and Solomon Northup. And it will be a kind of historical call and response, if you will, between the descendants and the ancestors. So please come back next week for a very inspiring conversation. Now tonight, we are very, very excited to bring another unique program. It's really the exclusive New York screening of WGN America's newest television series, Underground. It will air tomorrow at 10, and so we are delighted to get a sneak preview before anyone else does. Now, after the screening, we will have a panel discussion with the creators, writers, and executive producers Misha and Joe Pokaski, 2 of the stars of the series, Jurnee Smollett-Bell, who plays Rosalie, and Alano Miller, who plays Cato, and our own Eric Foner, who is the DeWitt Clinton Professor of History at Columbia University. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner. He's an expert on the Underground Railroad, and he's also an advisor to the Lapidus Center. So Q&A will follow. Please write your questions legibly on the cards. And now let's welcome the 2 people who are really at the basis of this incredible series, Misha and Joe Pokaski. Thank you.
Well, it's a tremendous honor to be able to screen Underground the night before we premiere at the Schomburg Center. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy the first episode.
Save it for the guests. I am Shola Lynch. I am the curator of the Moving Image and Recorded Sound Division right here at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. And I would like to introduce our guests so we can get this conversation started. I'd like to start with the creators and executive producers, Joe Pokaski and Misha. Welcome. The actors, Jurnee Smollett-Bell and Alano Miller. Actors/stars. And of course, our star, Dr. Eric Foner. Give them a Schomburg welcome, please. Wow, what a great response. I heard the audience laughing and clapping, but I want to take it back. Why, and start with the creators, why a movie, a series about slavery, why now?
Well, we always say that it's not about the occupation, it's about the revolution, and I think that's a story we haven't seen told before.
And when you say revolution specifically, what do you mean?
This is the most heroic story never told in American history.
On television, right.
On television. Never told on television.
Thank you, right, on television. So, but tell me though, but why now? I mean, what sparked the idea? Was it something that you saw? Is it something that you were living with?
A great title, Underground. No, I think that for us, Joe and I, one of the things we talked about a lot is that we were ready to see this story, the heroism that was happening at this time too. I think we always see this time period, you see everyone kind of portrayed as a certain way, and we really wanted to make sure that all of our characters enslaved and not had agency, and we got to see that they did love and cry and suffer and triumph and all those things.
And the more we did the research, the more that this story just had such great drama that, you know, normally you have to make up that sort of thing for the Hunger Games or something like that. But inherent in it was kind of a bravery I've never seen before. And the more we did research, the more the true stories were stronger than any fiction we've ever read.
So we're at the Schomburg Center. Tell us about the research. What inspired you? What did you dig into? We'll get to you all, because don't worry.
I mean, Misha turned me on to there were enslaved people narratives that people were recording at the Library of Congress. So often a son or a grandson would be recording their grandfather saying, explain what life was like. And it was just kind of amazing because it opened you up to how complex life was. And again, people laughed and loved, and you got to see kind of a different dimension that I had been exposed to.
And how did you pitch it to the networks? I mean, what was that like? You know, I have in my mind The Player, right? So what was it? The movie, the Robert Altman movie. So what was that pitch like, and how did you sell it?
Well, we said that we wanted to be bold. That was our number one. That's the word
Bold.
we kept saying over and over with the storytelling. Visually, you know, Anthony Hemingway, who directed it, brought that.
Red Tails, Anthony Hemingway.
And then also just with the music as well, we said we wanted to use contemporary music and kind of use that as a bridge from the past to the present. So bold, bold, bold.
Bold, bold, bold. So let's talk a little bit about what these roles meant to you. When did you first hear about the project? How was it brought to you, and what was your response?
A little over a year ago, at the end of January last year, I got a call from my agent. It was pilot season, and he was sending me a bunch of scripts. I had 2 or 3 offers that I was kind of considering, and he sent me the script, and he was like, Jurnee, this is one of the best pilots out there. And I got the description of what it was, and I was like, how are they going to do this as a TV show? And then when I read the first sentence, I read the first page and then finished the script, my mouth was open. And I immediately texted Anthony Hemingway, our director, and I was like, look, I'm Rosalie. And I sent him this long page. It was like a chapter of all the reasons why I was Rosalie. No other actress could play her like me. And
Wait, but what spoke to you about that role? I mean, it's so funny, but what was it that really drew you?
For me, Rosalie is so complex and so layered. On the surface, you think she's this shy house slave, but she's got all this inner working going on. She's got this strength inside of her. She's got these dreams, these ambitions that just won't be silenced. And placing that complex woman inside 1857, inside the environment and the restrictions of a plantation, was just so fascinating to explore. I had never seen our story told in a film or television show through the Underground Railroad. You know, I'd never seen that story told in general, and I was like, wait, I had to Google it. And I saw, there's amazing documentaries and, smaller projects, but there had never been a major motion picture or television show about this side of our history, which is such a bold and heroic side. And for me, I wanted to be a part of telling that story, telling the story of those of us who did revolt, those of us who did resist, who did fight back, who had the guts and the courage to run. And Rosalie, for me, there's so much that I'm just in love with her. And there's so much that she is thinking without even saying. There's a lot of nonverbal communication. And that's kind of like an actor's dream, to have those very rich and complex characters. So yeah.
That's a good segue to your character.
Oh yeah. Good evening. So I'm like her. I received a phone call about it, and I was absolutely like, no, this is not going to happen. But once I read the script, I was blown away. I think I was blown away.
Wait, you said no, this is not going to happen?
Yeah, I didn't think this. I didn't think that I. Yeah, I definitely didn't think
I'm
this.
not going back doing that.
No, because the way it's pitched to you is slave drama, but that's all they say. They
Right.
don't tell you that it's about the Underground Railroad. They don't tell you that it's about the revolution.
So what came to your mind?
12 years a slave, you know. I was like, I'm not getting whipped for nobody. I'm like, those days are over. No, I think for me, it was just, you know, having a chance to read the script and know that these were fleshed out characters, that they were all flawed. And that there wasn't just a hero and a villain and all those things, but we were seeing it from so many different perspectives. And for me to be able to play Cato, I remember they said, oh, you're gonna wanna play Noah, but they wanna see you for Cato. And I read it and I said, no. I wanna go on for Cato because it's a challenge to play a character like that and bring the humanity to him. It's gonna be a challenge for everyone because, you know, many of you already have your feelings about him.
Yeah, not non-fan.
Yes, that's fair for now. But the thing is that he's a character that's constantly evolving, and I think what Joe and Misha have done so brilliantly is that they've shown the humanity of him, and they've taken a character that we've seen that is an iconic character and turned him upside down and said, yes, he may be these things, but he's also this, and he's also this, and he's also this, and that in itself shows us the full fleshness of this character.
Right, so in a way, what you're all talking about is we're hungering for complexity when it comes to
Absolutely.
ourselves in the past, which is the best segue I can think of to our historian. So what is the historian's role, and how does a historian react to this fiction-based history? Mike.
I've only seen this one episode. I don't know what happens in the next 9. I'm anxious to see them. But as a historian, you know, it's not a work of historical, it's not a dissertation, you know, with a lot of footnotes. Nobody would see that, obviously, if it was. But I mean, to me, the first thing is just to say, whether Hollywood or TV, the sort of mass media have failed abysmally, with 1 or 2 exceptions, to actually portray the history of slavery in our country and to, you know, as it actually was. Just, you know, just remember that probably the most beloved picture in the history of cinema is Gone with the Wind, you know? It's on Turner Network every other night. If you, you know, account for inflation, it earned more money than any movie in history. So that's Hollywood's picture of slavery. Now, 12 Years a Slave rejected that, obviously, and that was a great thing. But a lot of people, well, okay, 12 Years a Slave, what do we need anything more now? This has been done. How many movies are there about World War II? You know, I mean, it's not like one movie doesn't solve the whole problem. And I commend the writers, the actors, for taking on the Underground Railroad, because on the one hand, you know, everybody has kind of at least heard that term, right? People have heard there is, you know, what, and they've heard of Harriet Tubman. She's a very popular character in children's books now. She may even turn up on a $10 bill soon, right? Woo! They're talking about putting a woman on, maybe Tubman. But anyway, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Jacobs, you mentioned. But of course, the Underground Railroad, or escaping from slavery, and I think we see this in the first episode here, the real story is the ingenuity and courage and resourcefulness of slaves who made the decision to run away, which was incredibly difficult. And you do get a picture of that here. It was not very easy to run away from slavery, and the vast majority of people who tried it were caught and returned. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next 9 episodes. I look forward to seeing it. But I think that, you know, to the extent that we see that, and then we see the other point, which is very important, particularly nowadays, is the abolitionist movement, the Underground Railroad, were interracial movements. And they were black and white people, men and women, cooperating for a just cause. And with race relations so, filled with tension nowadays, I think this is something we can look back on with pride in our history. There's a lot of our history. There's a lot of our history that is not that we aren't very proud of, but this is an episode I think both black and white people can look back and say there were very courageous people doing very important things for our society.
In that respect, some of the plot twists. So for instance, I'm curious where they came from. The idea of the song that was on the wall that Noah then used his own blood to try and print onto a shirt. Was that something that came out of your imagination, or was that something that you found in a text?
That was based on Follow the Drinking Gourd, and I think that a lot of at the time people were using songs as metaphors and codes for a lot of things, and we just wanted to kind of honor that with something in our show.
And specifically the printing, was that something you read, or that was something that the blood?
Yes. That was a little genre writing there.
Okay, right. That little bit of the hero and the action, the little bit of the hero and the action. That's great. So I was also struck by the diversity. Obviously, if you're going to tell a story about the Underground Railroad, there's diversity in casting. That's almost a given. But talk to me a little bit about the diversity behind the scenes. How did you choose the director? And tell me about who you collaborated with for the music and why.
I mean, I think we were just lucky to get the best possible person for each role. I mean, Anthony kind of found us. I'd worked with him on Heroes a little, and he came in, and nobody got the show in a way that we talked about it like Anthony did. He came in with this beautiful presentation about the show having swag and it being paced unlike anything you've seen in a period piece. And then I looked up the word swag, and I totally agreed.
Bold of you to mention that here.
And my only goal is to use it unironically someday.
Yeah.
And then he started talking about characters, and in fact, we had talked about this actress we loved named Jurnee, and he opened up his page on Rosalie, and the very first picture there was Jurnee Smollett-Bell. And
We didn't know she had put in a call already.
we didn't realize the fix
an
was
email, a thesis.
Wait. He had done that picture in his portfolio
way
before I texted him telling him I was Rosalie.
Sure.
Because he then texted me the picture of that portfolio saying, look what I, used in my pitching to even get the job.
But
It's
Anthony,
true, y'all.
Do what you got to do. Get the job.
Yeah,
By any means necessary.
Right, my sister.
right. But let's also not forget about John Legend and the music. I mean, that's a very bold choice. I mean, from the moment the piece begins, you're hearing boom, boom, boom. It's not right. It's not period music, is it, Dr. Foner?
Well, it's not music. It's not the music from 1857, right. Obviously. And presumably you're using that kind of very modern sound to draw your audience in, right? And particularly younger viewers who may not want to hear a spiritual from the 1850s right off. That's fine. I'm a historian. I'm not here to say, hey, this is accurate, this isn't accurate. My way of judging these things is it plausible? Is it plausible? If you had a guy getting up and saying, vote for Obama, that wouldn't be plausible in 1857, So we'd say this is way off the beam. But, I'm actually curious about a couple of decisions you made, actually, about what to put in and what not. Just not to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong. I didn't find it that plausible that a guy would get up in front of the Supreme Court in 1857 in Washington and try to give a speech about the Dred Scott decision or the Dred Scott case to people wandering by. I'm wondering, if, I can see you're introducing a character there who may perhaps have something to do with helping fugitive slaves later on. But is that just because you wanted to draw attention to the fact that at this very moment that the thing is taking place, you have this major legal case involving the status of Black Americans?
Sure.
we wanted, we were generally chasing truths, not fact, is something we'd say every once in a while. But we wanted, from a character standpoint, someone screaming into the wind, getting nothing, and that was kind of important. And then even just the very simple fact, and Misha pointed this out to me, that I did not know. I was a political science major. I did not know that Dred Scott was not allowed representation. He was not allowed to speak.
Well, I'm not so sure that's really true, actually. There were lawyers at the court arguing for Dred Scott. I mean, you're absolutely right. Dred Scott could not testify, but there were lawyers giving the Dred Scott part of, some very famous lawyers. Montgomery Blair, who later becomes a member of Lincoln's cabinet, was representing Dred Scott at the Supreme Court. So it's not, I mean, again, this is not, I don't want to be a historian killjoy just saying, but that sort of jumped out at me. That little scene was the one scene that jumped out at me as saying, I don't really think that.
But were there abolitionists speaking out for the cause publicly?
Oh, people spoke out. I don't know if they got up. Washington was a slave city. It was, the government was pro-slavery. I don't think a lot of people were getting up and giving anti-slavery speeches in Washington. But, but anyway, that's, this is your artistic license, which I respect. I'm not telling.
Do you want a job for season 2?
Right.
But that's
Come
actually,
help us out.
Yes, take the job. But that's actually a good question.
Take this job. Yeah.
Were there historians?
But one other question, then I'm going to stop with this. Why did you choose to set it in Georgia? Because, as somebody says in it, that's like 800 miles or 600 miles from the Ohio River. The vast majority, now you're dealing with individuals, not the majority, but the vast majority of slaves who did manage to get out came from Maryland, Virginia. Obviously, it's a lot easier to get there if it's 100 miles away than 800 miles away. So why did you choose to set it in Georgia rather than, let's say, Virginia, which would have been more representative, let's say?
Oh, because we're storytellers and we want to make it as hard as possible for our characters.
No. I'm gonna chime in, help you out there. I mean, part of it is also when you're dealing with telling a story to the public is to use their imagination as well. And the idea of the Deep South is so ingrained in us, and the idea of the challenge of running away. So that is, it's the spirit of it that, right. And then also it's so picturesque. The idea, like you want to see that shot, that giant shot, the aerial shot of the plantation and the cotton fields. Like you want to see that so you know where you are visually and emotionally and what to expect, and then to upend it, if I can speak for the creators.
Sure, you're absolutely right. I'm sure you're absolutely right.
No. Before we open it up to questions, I know there's some questions from the audience. What are your expectations for this? What do you want to get out of this, both as the creators and as the main characters in this? What do you want the audience to take away?
I want them to be able to celebrate. These are superheroes. And so for the first time, or for at least for me, I get a chance to see slavery depicted from a different point of view. This hopefully will inspire and encourage and edify and comfort, and it will be uncomfortable for many people to watch. And I think great television, film, theater does that. It sharpens people, and at the same time, hopefully it will say that we have worth, and that we should start to continue to take our ownership and understand the strategy that these brave men and women took in order to get forward.
Anybody else like to add to that? I mean,
that was well said.
That's a first.
Are there going to be educational materials that go along with this? Are you going to try and reach schools? I mean, is this kind of the gateway to deeper learning about the Underground Railroad and to starting to read Dr. Foner's books and to come to the Schomburg for deeper knowledge?
We would love if this is the start of that, for sure.
Okay. So do we have some questions from the audience? I have to read them. Oh. Okay. Okay, are you ready? On the green card, it says, how do you prevent this show from being a white savior movie show?
By not having white saviors? I think that, one of the things that's really interesting about this is that it was an integrated movement, that there were a lot of people working together, and I think it's important to acknowledge that and acknowledge that what we can do when we work together. I think that we were very cognitive, though, of that white savior complex and seeing that happen before and making sure that we're telling the story about people who were saving themselves and the people that were helping them save themselves.
Do you want to add to that a little bit about the collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we did very much on purpose in the first hour was the Chris Maloney story, where you thought you were seeing exactly that, the white savior story, and then hopefully we were telling you, no, the world is more complex, and the fight is on the people who want to be free.
Let me just say that this is a good question, and there is a myth or mythology about the Underground Railroad that it's basically white abolitionists sort of assisting helpless black people. And that's completely wrong, and obviously it seems like the series is not going in that direction, obviously, from the first episode here, but you did mention the name William Still popped up in there, and most of the people involved in the Underground Railroad were actually black, whether people in the South helping people who were escaping, or people in the North, New York City, Philadelphia, other places. But it was integrated, as we say, but the large majority were actually free blacks, some slaves in the South. So to the extent that this shows that, it will cut against this idea of the sort of white people assisting blacks who are not taking the initiative on their own.
The only thing I'll add is it really does matter who makes these things, these pieces for television. It matters who the writers are and the kind of dialogue and conversation. You need to be in the room and behind the camera and composing the music. Okay, that's it. Sorry, I'll get off my stump. Next question. Thank you. Misha. What was it like writing this story and having to embody these stories in order to tell the lives of these slaves accurately? Was it hard to live with the ghosts of these narratives?
I don't think it was hard for me because I think that again, all the research we did and all the stories were just so powerful and so worth telling. Do you know what I mean? That I didn't feel negatively about it. I was just very excited, and I think that, with our big giant ensemble cast, we always found the problem being like we wanted to tell all the stories and we couldn't tell all the stories, and I think that's what the joy of, hopefully, knock on wood, having season after season will be, is to be able to finally, put more of these stories out into the public eye.
Anybody else? How did you think about balancing the violence, the horrificness, with also the kind of love and joy? Did you think about the kind of recipe you were putting together?
You try not to think about it too hard, but I do think that we wanted to make sure that we showed the full breadth of what was going on plantation life, and seeing that these people, again, laughed and loved and cried and all of those things at the same time. But we weren't willing to shy away from the harshness of the realities of the time to kind of gloss over. We wanted it to be truthful.
And maybe this is an acting question. How do you keep it from being woe is me melodrama, right? We've seen that before.
I think you just tell the truth. Like Misha was saying, they were fully living, breathing people. They weren't victims. They were victimized. They were oppressed, but they were struggling every single day to just find moments of joy, to just, zone out and daydream, to love someone, to fall in love, to sing music. These were real things that they could still, and then no one could stop them from, and these were minor freedoms that they could have to themselves. So I think, in doing the research, reading the slave narratives, reading the Bullwhip Days, Incidents in Life of a Slave Girl, these, you read their stories and you realize, oh, you're not just a one-dimensional person that I've read about. You're like me.
So they becomes me, becomes we, is what you're saying. You like that? Okay, footnote. I want a footnote for that. Would you like to add anything to that? Because you have a complicated character.
Yes. as I've been told many times by Joe and Misha. No, I don't know. I just think that this is a very interesting time for this show to come out, and being able to step into it. I think when we first all got the job, when we show up in Baton Rouge, we're all like we're in love with each other. Like, oh my God, yeah, I can't believe this kind of thing, and then we get a chance to go on this plantation tour, and things really shifted very quickly. I mean, she tells a story as she says it, but she says it with a smile on her face. And all of us are, we're standing there in front of her, and she's telling this story, and she's just smiling in our face. The tour guide. She's telling us this story, and she's telling us about, and we're asking her questions, and she's flippantly answering it, And it, for us, I think that was the first burn. Then the second burn came when we walk into the slave quarters, and you can feel the weight of the room. You can see the notches, you can see the blood stains, you can see the change, you can see the just simple things, the pillow and the hay and the bit, and you just know that there is something more important that we're doing here than just acting. And how do you let those things go? How do you continue to wake up every morning and decide that you're going to do this, and do it with integrity, and do it with honesty, and do it with heart, and be able to finally say, this is not about me, but this is about you. And so I think for all of us in our cast, our crew, our writers, directors, producers, everyone, we all had the ancestors with us through this whole journey. And that's how we got to this point now.
Would you like to add anything? More questions. So how does entertainment factor into the making of a TV show about slavery? Misha's like, you got this? Come on, Joe.
Listen, again, I think this is the most heroic story never told on television. So I think, like Alano was saying, it's about paying tribute to the bravery and the heroism. I think those are the stories I like to watch. I like to watch thrillers. I like to watch shows about underdogs who shouldn't succeed. Just finding the truth and bending the arc of history. I think that's to be celebrated, and I think it's entertaining to some degree.
And is this the first historical piece you both have done? I mean...
No, I wrote on Spartacus. It was really historical.
Okay. So, we'll just go on to the next question. History, reality, soap, okay. Not yellow. How do you think this series may affect #Black Lives Matter movement happening today?
Strategy. I mean, I said it earlier, this is strategic in how they became free. We're talking about Martin Luther King, civil rights movement. They were strategic in how they got the changes made. And now we need to do the same thing. We need to understand that we do. We need to understand our worth. And for me, many people ask, well, how is that? What is that? One form, I would say, is definitely understanding our monetary value. We are a very small group who spends the most in America, and yet we don't have the power. And we need to understand that we are living in a capitalistic country, and if you want things to change, you got to mess with people's money. That's one form. As
a historian, I think it's obviously very important for people involved in activism today, Black Lives Matter, to know the history, as you were saying, of past movements, past struggles. There is a direct line from the sort of slogan of the abolitionist movement, am I not a man and a brother? They have a picture of a black man. Am I not a man and a brother? To Black Lives Matter. It's the same basic.
And I am somebody in between.
Yeah, right. And I am a man in the middle. It's the same basic concept to try to force the country to recognize the humanity of African American people. And you know, I think people need to know where that comes from in our society. So this is, you know, a piece of that education.
And also, I guess, from the film history context, I mean, there are movies that come out about slavery that are kind of blaxploitation-ish around 1969. I mean, Ossie Davis is in one called Slave, 1969.
Mandingo, remember that one?
Yes, right.
Not accurate,
Mandingo.
let's put it that way.
But I mean, what happens right before that with 1968? Martin Luther King is killed. And so this is articulation of wanting our voices on celluloid, which is such a powerful, powerful medium, and that there is that give and take. That starts back with the Birth of a Nation. Race movies, a response. What do we look like? Who are we? I am somebody. The next question. What made, there is the other hashtag, break free. Nobody's mentioned it. What is that hashtag and why that? Or was that a marketing ploy that you don't feel comfortable discussing?
It's not that. I guess, I don't, how do you sum up the idea of breaking free? I think that's just, it's a huge concept, and I got nothing.
I have even less.
Okay.
Well, I'll say this one thing then. I do feel like break free for me means a lot more things than just the show breaking free and them leaving for freedom. I think it also means mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So it is those things.
Yeah.
I think it does speak to our generation now that we need to break free of the things of paying $300 for sneakers as opposed to starting businesses. You see what I mean? Break free of the fact that we don't have education in our schools. So it is breaking free for there be actually men and women raising their children together. Those are the things that I think that we are instilling also.
Okay. 2 more questions, and then, you know, I mean, the brother's saying 5/5. That's all he's, here I am, right? And how fitting to have that discussion with Barack Obama finishing 2 terms in the White House. I mean, it fits into the world we're in, and with Black Lives Matter. So what made you choose these narratives for these characters?
I mean, I think a lot of it was the research. You know, we would call each other every night and be like, I just read this, can you believe this? And the other one would be like, I just read this is perfect for episode 4. It's amazing how much from episodes 1 through 10 that we just found in first-person narratives and in a lot of research, which was just amazing.
And again, our ensemble just got bigger and bigger and bigger because we just kept finding stuff that we're like, oh, this has to be in it, this has to be in it. So I guess we did less choosing than maybe we should have. But
how many seasons have you plotted out in your mind?
We wrote.
Yeah, how many seasons?
Do I die in that season?
Am I gonna be alive in season 3?
Where do I come in?
We wrote a 56-page Bible in which we broke out many, many, many seasons. And again, I just think there's just so much in this time period in these stories that we haven't heard that is waiting to be told. So. Yeah,
and I think, listen, we have one of the foremost experts on Reconstruction. I think the term underground, the reason why it's the most brilliant title ever imagined by a writer, is that it applies beyond the era. The struggle is one that's still going on. So hopefully many, many, many seasons.
I almost want to leave it there because, well, but I have one more question. Are you down?
One more.
All right. Did the cast and crew get an opportunity to visit any actual locations along the Underground Railroad?
I don't think so. No, we didn't get a chance to do any of those things, no, unfortunately. But we did, like I said, we did get a chance to.
We have individually,
yeah,
like in our
not
own
as a cast and
but
crew,
not as a cast and crew. We were shooting in Baton Rouge.
And actually, Dr. Foner, how much of the Underground Railroad can you see?
Well, you know, the first thing is we shouldn't take the notion the metaphor of a railroad too literally. Sometimes people think there were set routes and fixed stations. It was not quite so organized as that. It was little groups of people here and there who were helping fugitives. And, you know, there's not that much to see. I mean, in New York City, for example, where a lot of fugitives pass through it, you know, we tear down things every 20 years. So there are a few buildings way downtown. David Ruggles' house, who great black abolitionist, the Plymouth Church in Brooklyn Heights, where Henry Ward Beecher hid slaves.
I guess what I mean is it organized? I went to Maryland last summer with my kids, and you know the Harriet Tubman Park is opening, and you know we went to the general store where she got hit on the head, and there were some markers, but it wasn't that organized.
Yeah, there should be. There should be. The National Park Service has some places marked here and there, but there's a lot more to be done to indicate where actually people were who were helping fugitive slaves, no question about it. But a lot of it was individual initiative, haphazard, people who were not part of any organization, but just when they encountered a fugitive, they helped him, you know, and that was as common as a giant organization. So
we keep it here in the archives. I want to thank all of you for coming and sharing your work before it airs.